Okay, if you're here with us right now, chances are you're probably facing some kind of real estate decision.
Yeah,
I mean, you're looking at this market and it is so much noise out there.
absolutely.
What's going up? What's going down? Should I buy? Should I sell?
Right.
And that's what this whole deep dive is really about. It's to kind of cut through that noise.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of really interesting market observations to go through. Everything from kind of the general sentiment to the
Hmm.
primary market versus secondary market stuff, legal things, pricing things, and even going deep into the whole land licensing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal here, to kind of equip you with,
Yeah,
the facts.
yeah.
So you can actually make an informed decision, right? Not just go by what you're hearing on the news or what your neighbor's telling you.
Exactly, exactly. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
What is the general feeling right now about this market? Because it feels very complicated.
Very nuanced.
Yeah, you hear potential price increases, you hear potential cool down, you hear what investors are doing, builder confidence, you hear that fear of missing out.
Yeah, what's interesting is our sources actually point to around August 15th,
Okay.
kind of the start of the festive season, as a bit of a turning point.
Oh, interesting.
So, that does indicate that, these cyclical rhythms, they do play a role.
Right, and it's not just a boom or a crash,
No,
you know.
much more complex.
It's very complex, and one thing that was pointed out is this sort of lack of transactions right now.
Right.
You've got buyers that are, inquiring,
Mm-hmm.
but the sellers aren't really budging on their prices.
Yeah, they're holding firm.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, that holding pattern, I think, is a key takeaway for people to understand right now,
Yeah,
because that's ultimately what, will determine, the direction things move in.
right. And speaking of different directions, let's talk about primary versus secondary market. So, for folks out there, when we say primary market, we're talking about new launches directly from the builder.
Mhm.
Secondary market is, everything that's resaled. It could be under construction. It could be ready to move in.
Exactly.
'Cause-
And in the primary market, one thing we've seen is the number of new launches from April to August wasn't huge.
Okay.
But the ones that did happen did pretty well. I mean, a lot of them are seeing bookings of 50% or more.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about buying new, though,
Yeah.
one thing that stood out to me is that the completion dates seem to be way out there,
Mm-hmm.
6-7 years.
Yeah, and these are, RERA deadlines we're talking about.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
So this is not just, hopeful thinking. This is like legally mandated.
Exactly. And, that just raises the question, right, for you as a decision maker.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that timeline?
Yeah.
How does that fit into your overall strategy?
Totally. Yeah, and it seems like builders aren't really, responding with like huge price cuts or anything.
Yeah, not really.
Like that they're kind of just saying, okay, we're going to go to a construction-linked payment plan.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how they're dealing with it.
Yeah.
And, those construction link plans, they have their own, nuances to consider.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have to pay everything up front, but, you are exposed to any potential delays
Right, right,
from the builder.
right.
So that's a factor as well.
Yeah, and you don't really see, those days of like 100% sold out on launch day.
No, not as much anymore.
It seems to be,
A bit more measured.
yeah, and it actually seems like they're intentionally stretching the timelines.
That could be a strategy.
Yeah,
Managing inventory, managing their own cash flow, and just seeing where the market goes.
right.
So that's something for you to keep in mind
Yeah,
if you're looking at new construction.
absolutely. Now, what about, legal and regulatory hurdles? Because that can really throw a wrench in things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, one example our sources highlighted was this, pretty big low-rise project by a listed builder.
Mm.
And it's just been plagued by delays because of court cases litigation,
And I think that Tariq phrase really,
It really captures it.
yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just going to go on forever.
Yeah. And, these legal battles, they can really drag on.
Yeah,
So that's definitely a key area to look into, before you commit to anything.
totally. And it's not just the primary market that's seeing complexity.
Right.
I mean, the resale market also seems to be slowing down.
Yeah.
Even though buyers are interested, you would think that, with all these new projects taking forever, that the resale market would be booming.
You would think.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not quite happening that way.
No.
And it's interesting because you have this dynamic where buyers are kind of expecting distress deals.
Right.
They're waiting for sellers to, be forced to lower their prices.
Mm-hmm.
But the sellers are kind of holding back. Maybe they're expecting, some payments to come in so they don't need to sell at a lower price.
Right. So it's like this
Yeah.
weird standoff.
Exactly. And, we looked into those under construction resale properties to see, what their payment timelines are like.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, there are no major payment milestones until the end of 2024.
Wow. So people are really waiting to see what happens.
They are.
So this whole expectation of distressed sales might not actually materialize.
It might not. And what's key for you, the decision maker, is that the market isn't really in distress.
Right.
A lot of these properties that are being marketed as distress sales are actually priced higher than market value.
Wow.
So you really got to do your homework.
Yeah. Buyer beware.
Buyer beware.
So let's get into the specifics of pricing, because that's probably what everybody really wants to know about.
Absolutely.
And it seems like there's a big difference between what people think prices are and what they actually are.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, one of the biggest takeaways, I think, is to really focus on density as an indicator of value. So density being, units per acre. Generally, lower density means better livability,
Right.
better appreciation potential.
So even if you have 2 units that are the same square footage,
Yeah.
the one that's in a lower density project could be way more valuable.
Absolutely. Could have a better layout,
Right.
more open spaces around it,
Yeah.
just a better overall feel.
Yeah. And in the resale market, it's important to remember that prices can change week to week.
Oh, yeah.
There's no set price
Right.
per project.
No. And even within the same project, you can see variations of 5–10%,
Really?
based on floor views, sun directions, things like that.
Oh, wow. So you can really make a mistake if you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. And, then you start adding in additional charges,
Right? Like what?
like floor rise charges, BLCs,
Oh, yeah. Those PLCs.
and that can make the price vary by 100%.
Wow, that's huge.
It is huge. And then you get into the whole confusion around, carpet area versus super area.
Yeah, that's a big one.
What are you actually paying for per square foot?
Right, because, you hear all these numbers thrown around.
You do.
And it's like, wait a minute, what am I actually getting?
Exactly. And, for those who might not be, completely familiar with these terms, carpet area is really that usable space inside your walls.
Mm-hmm.
Super area includes that, plus a share of the common areas.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, lobbies and hallways and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the exclusive area might be things like balconies or, other specific spaces.
Right, so it can get really confusing.
It can be very confusing. And that's why it's so important to really understand those distinctions.
Totally. And just to give folks some, specific things to look at, our sources mentioned a few projects.
Yep.
Godrej Meridien, Shapoorji, Palanji Project 102, Sobha Project 108, Elan Project 106.
Right.
Again, not giving specific advice, but these are just some examples within the market where you're going to see those price variations.
And I think, as you do your research, these projects are good examples of what's out there.
Okay, so let's talk about something really fundamental to all of this, which is land.
Land.
And how it gets licensed for development. And this was a real eye-opener.
It was.
So from what we've seen, there has been no fresh CLU,
Right.
change of land use for any large land parcels in Gurgaon between 2014 and 2024.
Yeah.
So we're talking a decade.
A decade.
Of no new land.
No fresh land.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that really explains, why the supply has been so limited.
Totally.
And most of the projects that you see coming up now are on land that was licensed years ago.
Wow. So it's not even like there's a bunch of small CLUs happening either.
No, it's very rare. I mean, only about 1–2% of projects are on newly licensed land.
Wow. That is so interesting.
Yeah. And because of that, you see builders trading existing land parcels among themselves.
Oh, wow. So they're not even really going out and buying new land.
No, it's more about, utilizing what they already have the approvals for.
Right. And even somebody like Shapoorji Palanji.
Right.
A big name.
Reputable builder.
They haven't been able to acquire new land in 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
That just shows you how tough it is.
And it seems like a lot of this land is controlled by North Indian builders.
North Indian builders through these internal arrangements and relationships.
Right. So it's a very tight-knit community.
Very much so.
And of course, when you have limited land, you're going to have legal and transactional complexities.
Absolutely.
One thing they mentioned was land consolidation.
Right.
Like trying to get all these different owners to sell adjacent parcels.
It's a nightmare. It's really tough to do.
Yeah. And then you've got mortgages, you've got shared ownership, you've got disputes, all these things affecting the land titles.
Yeah. And litigation between builders is quite common as well.
Yeah, it's not just, individual landowners fighting, it's builders fighting with each other.
Exactly.
And even listed builders are facing legal challenges.
They are, so it's just a reminder that due diligence is so important at every stage of the process.
Okay, so amidst all of this, people are wondering, is there going to be a crash?
Right, the big question.
And it seems like what they're saying is that a crash would probably look more like a minor correction.
Yeah, a dip.
Not
a collapse.
Yeah, not like 2008.
Right. And, more likely what we'll see is prices effectively increasing.
Okay. How would that happen?
Through things like unit downsizing.
Okay.
Adding more amenities without significantly increasing the rate.
Right. So they're kind of playing with the numbers a little.